Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Optimized Ecommerce Podcast. I'm Tanner Larsson, and today we are going to talk about something that's not specifically ecom related, but it's one of the big problem areas that we see a lot of people do and deal with when they are building their online business or any business in general. And that is micromanaging your teams. And how do you get your team to work well? How do you manage them? How do you not step on their toes? How do you not basically screw that up? All right. And I can speak from experience in that I'm very good at screwing that up. BGS has had a kind of meteoric growth over the past few years, especially this past year. In the last 18 months, we went from about 12 people, which I was very comfortable at 12, to 65 people. Okay. Massive growth, and like systems that work at 12 and leadership styles in teams and things like that work great at 12, do not work the same at 60, 63, 65 type things. Okay. So today I'm joined by Rosemary Kwoka, who is, she'll tell you she's a first of many in BGS, but she's actually, through marriage now, because she got married, is related to another one of our ROs, and just a total badass. But she's really awesome at not only revenue optimization, but she's got a kind of a unique style of managing the teams that she works on, interacting with the teams, even if she's not the lead. And then also managing me. Like, there's a lot of projects where Rosemary has to deal with me. And it takes a unique style. It's kind of like, there's a word for it. It's like Tanner wrangling. And she's pretty good at it. And, we're going to have her kind of go through and share her expertise on how do you lead a team, not micromanage the team. And then what happens when you do micromanage them, and how does performance suffer, and how can you fix those kinds of things? So before we really dive into that, Rosemary, I just wanted to say thank you for being here and bring you on. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you came to work with BGS and what you do?
Yes. Hi, Tanner. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this podcast. Absolutely. I'm really excited about it. So how I got a part of BGS, kind of hit on the head with Eric Kwoka. He is my husband's cousin, and had mentioned he actually was back from BGS Live because he lived in Korea at that time. And I had sushi with him, and I was like, "How are you working with a company in the United States, but you live in Korea, and what's going on here?" And I was working as a customer service. I don't know. I guess I would call it I ran the customer service department for a company. And I did a lot of analysis on their customer service as well as other things. And I got into BGS in the internship program with Haley. And I was also on my journey to play Australian rules football in Australia for semi-professional football. And that's how I got into it, was first through Eric, and then my skills in e-commerce customer service analysis got me in the door, and that's where I am now.
Awesome. So talk a little bit about what you do from like an RO standpoint, and kind of some of the projects you're working on and things like that.
Yeah. So as a revenue optimization expert with BGS, I write 2 sites, and we essentially optimize page by page. Just do the standard revenue optimization. I'm sure we've talked about it a lot here on this podcast, but I think I really emphasize on user behavior, kind of copy, and user interaction within the site. I really enjoy user testing and listening to people use the website, hearing the words that they use, and then we incorporate those incorporate their wording when we optimize whatever page we're testing. I guess that would be my favorite part about optimization, is watching people use the site. I also do content creation for our future projects, and I'm also a part of I call it the EI revamp team. Really proud to be a part of that, working with Jeremy and Tanner, wrangling Tanner as he says it.
True.
So those are the projects that I'm in. I also take a Google Analytics course with Pon during the week, which is something that I'm really grateful for. And yeah, it's you guys keep me busy, and I'm grateful for that.
That's for sure. So, guys, a couple more points on what Rosemary just said to kind of tie some open loops that if you're new to the podcast. So she said she's doing a Google Analytics training with Pon. Pon is our head GA engineer, Google Analytics engineer, and just probably one of the smartest guys on the planet when it comes to Google Analytics and Tag Manager. He's just a wizard. And he runs that whole side of things, but he's also started doing kind of a training program for our ROs to give them additional levels of GA training beyond what they already get as part of an internship program and as our normal training. So we've got a lot of, we're really big on internally training our team and, continuing to level them up so they just become, even better rock stars than they already are. And then on the EI revamp team, what we're talking about there is Ecom Insider is our kind of our main business accelerator program where we teach what we do on our partner brands. We teach all the RO principles and how we do all this massive growth on stores to our Ecom Insider members. And right now we're in the process. We've done some auditing of the program. We've had some new ideas and things we want to change, and we're going through and we're revamping the program to update it with all the newest stuff and the best training that we are now currently doing. And we're really excited about doing that, but it's a massive undertaking. And there's quite a team involved. Like I'm involved, Rosemary is involved, Jeremy, Brad, and probably 5 or 6 other people that are on a regular basis, not considering the people that will pull in for specialty things periodically. So there's probably going to be around 20 plus people involved in this one EI revamp project at varying times. And if you've ever, worked with people, it's very tough. Sometimes it's like herding cats to kind of get everything to work together and not upset one person while getting the other piece going and all of that. And in this EI revamp project, along with she's also helped with other projects. And on her RO team, she has to deal with not only herself, but other ROs coming in and out. She has a front-end developer, a back-end developer, a GA expert, bug checkers, and there's a whole pod of what we call them pods, but like a team of people that within that pod that she has to manage and work in order to have the results produced on the store. And this is on a constant basis. So one of the things that Rosemary is very good at is managing all this and working with these people and also the client, because she's the buffer between the client and everything else. So there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into making this work. And Rosemary is one of the best at it. So we're going to kind of dive into we're basically talking about how does she do this? How does she break it down? And specifically, we'll talk about micromanaging as well, because that's very much a double-edged sword. It can be thought of as good. It can also be really, really bad. So we're going to kind of jump into it. All right. So Rosemary, first question, right? I think I actually might have answered your question for you, but what is your experience in managing teams online? Kind of take it from whatever I said and add to it.
Yeah. So in addition to, having those obvious big picture teams like the EI revamp, and managing those 2 sites, you're right. There are other teams within those teams that we manage. So like you said, developers, clients, big one, other ROs that help you within the sites, passing on information back and forth, all for one big purpose, which is to optimize the store and increase that conversion. So yeah, we hit all those points as to what I manage within e-commerce. And then I also manage a USA team, United States, Australian football. I am USA team captain. And within that, there are teams. There's a lot of elements with like physical fitness, nutrition, practice, skills, coordinating schedules, team bonding. There's a lot of elements that translate in everything as far as just being a part of the team and being an inspiration. And that's kind of where I wanted to start with leadership within a team and the difference between managing and being a leader. And, being a boss and being a leader, you can be a boss and not be a leader. And that's been 100%. Proven in so many companies. You see a boss and then you see everyone else. Mm-hmm. And the most productive teams that I've been a part of is when everyone is a part of the team, and there isn't really a distinct difference between a leader and the people that you're leading. It's pretty much everyone is holding hands with that.
Absolutely. And I think you actually really described one of the unique features of like kind of the build, grow, scale culture is that with it, like, yeah, there may be someone who's point or running point on a particular project or whatever, but that same person who's in the lead really has the same roles, responsibilities, and everything else, maybe just a few extra than everybody else. And it's just a very big family style environment of everybody pulls their own weight and pushes everybody else to excel.
Yeah. It's in the sense of like, the way that I visualize it, it's like you have a group of people and then you have your flag as to what you stand for. And as you're leading this group, there's that one person holding that flag forward, but we always think the leader is the person holding that flag, but that's not true. Everyone takes turns holding that flag going forward, and the leader is that person guiding that and pushing that group forward. And everyone has a different part that leads a specific thing. So I am a leader within BGS that is also being led by other leaders in BGS. And that's what's so beautiful about this company is, what we all call it about like a family feeling company, but it's very professional and it's very open, and there's a lot of trust within it. And I think for me is the distinguishing point between, not micromanaging and being a great manager. And that trust is what starts with that.
Absolutely. And that's actually a good segue because, speaking about micromanaging, that's something that we work very hard on, like Matt and I and Zach and everything else. And from trickle down type thing is not micromanaging. And in my case, before we get into I'll let you explain it and why. Like in my case, micromanaging, I tend to have, because I know how to do something, if I don't see it being done quickly or quite the way I need it or whatever, it's my normal reaction. I fight that reaction, but my reaction is to just go in there, step in and say, hey, let me just take care of it. I'll get it done. Or if I don't just that's taking the sword back. That's taking the responsibility away from the person, taking the trust away, which is not good, obviously. But the other side of that is, okay, well, they're not doing it quite my way. So instead, I'm just going to be over their shoulder, making sure every single step of the way they're doing it my way. Now, we've learned very, very effectively as the team's grown that just because Tanner knows how to do it one way doesn't necessarily mean that the 60 smarter people on the team than him don't have a better way to do it, right? So that's a big part of how do you not get into the process of micromanaging. But before we kind of, well, actually not before, but now, why don't we jump into what micromanaging is? Let's start there, and then where do you feel it comes from? I kind of talked a little bit about that, but why don't you go deeper?
Yeah. So everyone has their own type of version of micromanagement, but I feel like this definition will hit everyone's feelings as to what micromanagement is. And I do want to preface this as there is a time and a place for micromanagement, and we can get into that later. But for me, a micromanager is someone who feels the need to be in control of every step of the process in order to hit that target, in order to hit that goal. That includes all of the small details, like, when they take their breaks, how long they're taking to do something, the small itty bitty steps that people get to accomplishing one step to obtain the target or the goal or whatever you want to call it. Some micromanagers have a hard time delegating work. It's a similar quality or similar thing that you kind of said, Tanner, where you're like, well, I know that I can do this and I know that I can do it the best. So, you don't have that trust that someone else can do it, and you don't trust that someone else's way can also be a good way. So, another part of micromanaging is the absence of the bigger picture in the moment. So for a micromanager, every little detail really matters to them. Every single bit. If it's not perfect, we can't get to our goal. If this is not the way that it is, there's no way we could possibly get to where I want to be. And something that I have experienced that I laugh at it because, we've all been a part of this, is that a micromanager wants to be involved in every step. That means if there's an email that you need to ask, someone, say you need to ask your client a question, that manager wants to be in that email just to make sure that you're saying it correctly. A micromanager just needs to know absolutely everything about every single detail that any of their employees or teammates have done. Now, I'm going to go back and clarify that there's a time and a place, and I would say it would be really important if you were like a rocket engineer and there were so many details that you needed to be a part of, and you needed to make sure for the safety of humanity that this rocket follows all of the management, also include, there are some details that are needed. And so maybe that's a bit extreme, but I can understand micromanaging in a safety, highly detailed workplace. But in general, and what we're used to, it's a give and take. There are some moments where you maybe minor details are important, but not for the whole grand scheme of thing. And you can't use micromanagement as your primary source of leadership. And I would argue that it's not really leadership, because to me, leadership is inspiring people to get to the goal, and basically convincing people, or maybe convincing is not the best word, but giving everyone this clear intent that what we're doing is great and everyone's input is so important. It's just so important, and everyone feels that way, because if you don't have everyone on board, and if someone's like, well, my opinion doesn't matter, it's like, well, no, it does matter. And what you have to say is super important to all of us, because that person who's quiet in the back, who might not say anything, what they have to say is actually pretty good, because they just might not feel they have a stand or say it. And micromanagers suppress those feelings. Repress those feelings. They if you're not going to speak up, and if you do, they probably don't care about what you have to say. And I want to finish on this, but with this section is, Tanner, you do such a good job at making your intent and purpose so clear. And I think that is such a huge thing for us at BGS, is that you lead us by saying, this is my vision, this is what I want, and you give us the opportunity to get there. And we get to check in with you and show you what those things are. And that is like such a huge thing for a leader, is just to be clear as to what needs to get done and opening up that trust. So I know there's maybe past Tanner, like you said, that was like, what is happening? No, I can do this. Maybe take this away. Totally. Yeah. But that's, as you said, we learn and we grow, and we create an empire like BGS is.
Absolutely. And that was great. A couple pieces on that I wanted to just add to is, there's the key points that she talked about. I want to just emphasize from if you are a micromanager, or you may not even know you are one yet, especially when you don't have a team and you're starting to hire. You usually don't find out you're a micromanager until you have people working for you or working with you. But also, it's not always the leader who's the micromanager. You may have somebody on your team who's like, Rosemary's the leader, but Joe Bob, Dilly Bob, whatever, decides that he wants to, he's got this OCD complex where he just has to be involved in everything, and he can disrupt the thing. But the point that I was actually going towards before I rambled on that was that the micromanagement style actually stifles creativity, production, and performance. So if those three things are important to you, and if you're having employees, those all should be important to you. Creativity may not be as important depending on what your role is in the company, but production and performance, and satisfaction. Okay. Those things all suffer because nobody likes it. Micromanagement drives people crazy. They don't feel valued. They don't feel important, as Rosemary said. And from, the employer side of things, your idea of building a team and having people work for you and work with you is to help you achieve more, right? Well, what a micromanager does typically is they basically make the team only as effective as the micromanager. So you may have 5 people on the team, but you can still only accomplish what that one person can accomplish because they hold back the entire team. On the flip side of that, you get the dissatisfaction with people's workplaces. People don't feel valued. They don't feel as Rosemary said. But in more than that, you'll have people quit. They'll stop caring about their job. And another impact area is company culture, which if you allow micromanagement, then culture suffers. And there's all kinds of books on culture. We're not really going to get into that kind of stuff. But I do want to talk about one aspect of it is if you want to have a good company culture where your team wants to be there. Like our philosophy follows a friend of ours named Craig Hanley. He wrote a book called it's basically on how to train people, like Hired to Quit, Inspired to Stay is the book, but you should read it. It's an amazing book. But basically we train our team and give them all of the stuff we can so they're equipped to do their job or potentially leave and go do something even bigger than what they did with us. But there's a reason people stay at the same time, because we do provide an environment and they want to be there. We did a company culture index not too long ago that was completely random, and we scored a 98 out of 100 with 65 people on culture. And it's because these elements. There's other pieces too, but because these elements are not in place, if you build that and you create that for people, they'll want to stay and they'll do their best work. So. That was just a little add-on to what Rosemary was talking about. But let's, before we go into the next section, I wanted to ask you, where do you think the micromanagement style, why do people micromanage? Where does it come from?
Yeah, I think that it comes from, first, a lot of passion, maybe too much passion, I feel like, you need to view people as always having positive intent and being just, I just assume everyone's a good person, right? And everyone wants to be successful, and no one wants to be the bad guy. No one wants to be that person that is that bad leader, right? So I think that it comes from extreme passion and fear of not getting to that point. And that with that extreme passion is a lot of power. And where power and passion are two really great things to have, you can have way too much of it. And I think those are the basis of micromanagement, is fear of losing your power, and then fear of, not getting to your goal. And that is also mistrust. So, I think people might have had experiences where they weren't able to communicate, or, you hear people who are like, oh, I really don't like group projects. I'm always the one who does everything, and, or yes, that does happen. But we got a micromanager might have had that experience, is like, look, I just want an A, so I'm going to get it done. But that's not a good quality. No one wants to be a part of that person that's in that group. Everyone's either just like, okay, fine. And then if you're a manager and you're like, this is my way or the highway, well, you're only going to get 20% of productivity out of your employees or your teammates, because that's how much you're giving them. That's how much control you're giving them. You only get the same back. And so I would say passion, over powerful, and fear and mistrust would be the, basis of people who micromanage. Because I do want to acknowledge that micromanagers, they want to get something done. They're so excited about it, and they don't want it to go. And they just, it's my way or the highway. And right. We see that doesn't always work. And that's why people, when you're a micromanager, that's why you have employees that get, frazzled and upset. And, you get a lot of pushback, and there's a lot of frustration, in my experience with micromanagers.
Absolutely. So we kind of talked about how micromanagement, it's a process, and in some cases it can be utilized great, but it's not really a style of leadership. Let's just talk so much more about you and like, how do you make this work across Team USA? You're doing that. I mean, obviously you've got a bunch of very type A personalities in that world, right? And then obviously within BGS, you've got a mix of type A personalities, which any one of them could be the leader or whatever else, or could lead or whatever. And you've got to kind of, how do you navigate that world? What's the style of leadership you use to do that?
Yeah. So I would call, let's see, I would call my style of leadership as like, direct. I would call myself a very macro, very big picture, leadership style. And how I would describe that and how I've managed my teams, both with USA and commerce, is, similar to how you do it too, Tanner, is by establishing a clear intent and goal first, getting everyone on board. And that's just the first step, because you have a team and you just say, hey team, our goal for this today, and like we've got a really big goal, of course, placing first and being the best USA team in the world. We want to be the best, but we also have targets that we have to meet to get there. So, hey team, our goal is to have an average, 7-minute, 20-second, 2K time. That's our goal. Team, our goal is to accomplish, 3 cases in this next week. And, that's the goal. That's the intent. That's what we want to do. But then there's an element of different personalities. Like you said, there's A-type personalities. There's the introverts. There's the people who just are funky, Yep. They like to put their own little twist on things. And that's where the personality of the leader and the ability to shift into the different types of personalities. So identifying that not everyone is the same way that you are, and identifying that introvert that might not speak up during the meetings actually has a lot to say. And so you have to set up the opportunity for that introvert to be able to speak. So it might be, I'm going to talk about this, and then you'll call on them and just say, hey, in a calm situation, what do you have to say about this? And so that's where I have found success, is by identifying that it's not one size fits all. It's about addressing the general picture. We all have this main objective, and the ways that we get there, we will all get there in some time. The extrovert A-type personality is going to be like, I'm a leader and I'm going to get there. And then you've got someone else who's like, well, I'm going to design this and I'm going to flourish over here. I'm going to make it look so good. And I'm going to get to that point. Well, that person, you're going to give that person a different job than the A-type personality, than the introvert, right? Like, you just have to identify who's right for each job, and then have the ability to adjust and shift. So if, say, the quiet person might blossom between the first part and getting to the goal, well, that person might be like, hey, I did all this analysis and it's so great. I kind of want to do the presentation. And you're like, wow, I never thought that you would want to do the creative part of that, Absolutely, take it away. And you might see something so grand that person produces. And so that is kind of the background or foundation that I feel that a great leader, and how I have been able to find success, is by, having that as the foundation. Now we need to get to the point where I'm like, okay, but this is all nice, but how do you get things done? And everyone's got their own way. There's got to be a point to where, there's deadlines, there's all these things. You can't just keep on accommodating. And that's where, check-in points. I like to call them check-ins. It's not saying, did you get this done? It's saying, where are we at with this? And it's up to that person and you in the beginning to establish that trust where they can tell you, oh my gosh, I did this, I couldn't do it, or I went this direction, I misunderstood. And the check-ins for that leader to do is like that leader needs to be present and needs to almost be on top of all of their people in the sense where they're like, all right, I understand that. Sarah is doing a great job. She's hitting this point. I am in this understanding that she knows what her goal is. Now, Paul over here, he might have some bad habits that are happening right now, and he missed last week's deadline, or whatever. I'm going to talk to him. Hey, Paul, what's going on? How can I help you? How can I support you? And those are the ways that that I feel are the best way to talk to a person is not, you didn't do this. What's going on? It's, hey, I'm here to support you. I want to be your resource. I'm going to shift and talk to you the way that you want to be spoken to and the way that you feel the most comfortable so we can identify the situation. And I just want to also point out that it's not always the people or the people that you're leading that are the issue.
Correct. Usually it's the leader.
It's the leader. And the leader needs to identify those things within themselves, and that will translate. So maybe if you're in a position where you're feeling like your team is not being successful and you're like, gosh, what's going on? I feel like we're meeting our deadlines or we're not. And like everything is falling apart. That's when you take a minute to reflect and figure out what's going on within yourself. And sometimes that absolutely solves everything. You're like, oh, I got back on track on my own things. I, started checking in more. I've cleared out whatever is going on in my life that is preventing me from being a support system for my team. And now all of a sudden we're flourishing and we're doing a lot better. And maybe you didn't have to it was just you having a different mindset and shifting in that.
That plus the other side of it is a lot of times what you think is clear is not clear to them.
Right.
Yes. Just, it's different for every person. We've done a lot of work on this in our team as well, right? We've had Olivier, who's a really great, I call him a mentalist, basically. He's the guy who can just interview you and learn your entire psyche and break you down and give you this comparison chart so that we can then learn about ourselves, but then compare it to other people on the team and learn how to deal with each person. Like Rosemary and I are polar opposites in the way we're broken up. She's a futurist and I'm very heavy on strategy. She's super organized on down to the future, how it's going to play out. I'm a visualizer and how it's going to play out, but we accomplish a lot of the same things because we're both very driven, but the way we're driven is completely different. When I explain something to Rosemary, she is not going to be happy if I'm saying, okay, well, this is the first 2 steps. I need you to work on that. She's going to flip out because she needs to know the whole picture. Doesn't have to know every single step along the way yet, but she needs the full vision of why am I doing these 2 steps? What's the end goal? How does that work together? And then there's other people who oh, don't tell me everything. That just boggles my mind. And so there's different communication styles that need to happen within the mini team to communicate the exact same information. If someone can't handle it all, then you give them in chunks. Also, if someone Rosemary is a futurist, she needs to know what the outcome is going to be and how she can prepare for it and document it and back out into where she needs to start. Someone else just needs to be told, hey, just do this. And then I'll tell you the next thing to do. And then the other side of it is how clearly you know what it is you want to achieve. If you're unclear on here's the big goal, but what we need to do to hit that goal or the goal is fuzzy, there's no way you're going to be able to get your team on board or measure their performance. If that's the other piece where issues come into play is if there's not clear KPIs or at least milestones of how do I know I'm doing a good job?
Right.
And if you can't communicate that, this whole thing that Rosemary's been talking about just gets even worse. So more often than not, the leader's the problem, which kind of stinks. And also, have you trained or equipped your team in that regard to be able to do the task you're asking them to do?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And there are ways and tools that you use that, to help keep track of all of that progress. And, we use Trello, to see where we're at to review what people have done in the past. And Slack is a beautiful app. I really
yes.
Yes. I think that's such a great way to be just to be independent but working together and all of that. So I would say that I'm also a big fan of Google Docs and having the collaborative way of working. But just literally seeing the different tasks, the different points that we need to accomplish in order to get this target number one. That's a good tool to use. So everyone's clear, and to some degree. Some people might need more clarification than the other. But it's known that by week 3, we need to have 6 cases done. And cases is ambiguous. Whatever it is that you need to get done, week 3, that needs to get done. And everyone sees that what needs to get done. And whatever happens within that, it's up to you as the leader to make sure the people that you're leading know what their role is. And they're so excited about it. And maybe one person might have a job that they're like, fine, I'll do it. Like, it's not my favorite. But those are, sometimes there's jobs that just aren't your favorite.
Totally.
So, you just support that person in any way that you can. So the next time that there's a role, you just find something that that they'll flourish in. I can't emphasize enough is just by always shifting within yourself and understanding that there's a path, but whatever that looks like, that path might be a forest path and then it'll turn into a beach. I'm just trying to say that there's just so many different looks to how you get there.
Yep. And being okay with each team member using their own methodology within what's allowed for your company, of course, to get there. Everybody's going to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But the end result is what's important. As long as quality is maintained, any kind of legality is maintained.
Yeah.
The path doesn't matter as long as the outcome is achieved. And the allowing people the autonomy to do it their way is how you get peak performance out of your team.
Yeah. And asking questions. So if you are someone who wants to be involved and you want to know say you're an introvert and you want to know how this extreme extrovert creative, person is, how are they going to, I don't get it. How is this going to help us? Maybe you should word that a little nicer and more direct, but but you can, show that you're engaged and you want to know how they're going to do it. You want to learn. And that's, that's a part of the whole, just that whole enrollment of trying to understand that person. So you're there for them and you're showing that man, I probably wouldn't do it this way, but I'm curious how you do it. And this is very cool. And then you get that understanding as to how that creative person that maybe you're not, familiar with, but you get it and you understand how they're going to get there.
Yeah. A lot of times that super quiet introvert is like the mad scientist behind the screen, behind the scenes. Like they're just, sometimes they're just wicked smart. And you're like, oh my gosh, how come I have not been leveraging your talent more before? Eric is a perfect example of that. Eric
Absolutely.
Is so quiet. So Eric, it's crazy because the dude was a Marine, right? Which you don't exactly expect to see quiet, self-reserved, shy kind of guys as Marines, but he was a Marine. And he's very quiet. He's very dry. He's to the point. He only says basically the bare minimum of what he has to say to get his point across. But the dude is wicked smart. And he's probably the most highly educated RO on our team from just a pure knowledge standpoint. And when you engage him and you draw him out and you're like, hey, Eric, what about this? And he just goes off and you're like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. But if you don't ask him, you're not going to get it.
Right.
Because he's not, he volunteers it now because he's comfortable in the team, but just from someone like Eric, when he first starts, he may have the knowledge, but if he doesn't get it or the request given to him, he's just going to do his work, but maybe not add to the rest of it. And that's one of the things that from a leadership perspective, we've been like, man, we gotta make sure, draw Eric out more, make him more comfortable so that he is willing. And now he's writing an amazing blog for the article. He actually developed a product page course. He's on video now, does podcast, like he's just sharing his wisdom with the world now. And it's awesome. But if we hadn't nurtured that, he would just be this amazing mad scientist behind the scenes that you would never know is the genius that he is.
Yeah. And I like to visualize things, and something that I kind of view is that, you view each person as this light, this just amazing light. And we as a team need to shine in one direction. The leader is going to turn that person in the direction where their light shines the brightest. And that's what that's what BGS has done for Eric, is that, we've got this just big brain and just amazing person, and giving them that opportunity to be the bright person and contribute the most and shine the most, that's what a leader does. And that is the exact opposite of what a micromanager does. They only point them in one direction. So their light may be regular bright or dimmed or whatever. But we're not, you're not allowing them to turn to where it can be the most. And so that's what's so great about being an open, shifting, vulnerable leader.
And you want to get the ideas from everybody. You never know where that good idea that's going to make the job easier come from. Okay, so the last main question I really want to get into is there's definitely in projects and managing teams, there are things like that are very high detail oriented, that are or high impact, and then there are low detail, low impact type of tasks that are less detail oriented versus the higher detail oriented. And you've got to be able to work with your team on both of those. What's your experience in doing that and helping them work through the varying types of high detail and low detail tasks?
Yep. So first you would want to identify which person on your team works better with small details and which person flourishes with maybe an ambiguous detail. So that's where I typically start, is by identifying who's best at what. I mean, again, like that goes for any task. But when we're looking at high detailed tasks, you want to get that analyzer in there. You want to get that person who loves the nitty gritty of everything. And for me, I am this kind of whole picture open person where the little itty bitty details can actually paralyze me sometimes, because I'm like, whoa, I don't know what to do. There's so much. So, you find those people who are comfortable in that. And then, because analyzers are so great, they analyze and analyze and analyze, and they can analyze for 5 years. So you got to get on those people, on the people who love analysis and numbers and all of that. And we give them deadlines or goals or steps on what we need. So, hey, this is what needs to get done. This is the details that we want. This is our goal and this is our deadline. So that's where you need to be clear on your intent and have direct and clear understanding of when things need to get done. And as a leader for high detailed tasks, you also need to be very available. So if, we have high details and we have a day to get this done, that leader should be there as an open source of like, hey, I'm here to support you. This is where we're at. Hey, how's it going? What's going on with this? You're not saying, did you get this done? Did you get that done? Because even an analyzer might have different steps as to how they're going to accomplish that high detailed project. So it's all about you as a leader to be present and to be aware of the situation and prioritizing, what's going on. A more low detailed project, that's where, you're still going to check in, but you're going to allow that freedom and that trust for that person to accomplish those steps or, whatever needs to get done in order to get to that target. So it requires a lot more from the leader to be present and to trust those people that they're going to get to it. So just being involved, but not involved in the sense where they're like, if you get this wrong, like it's done and over with. You want to make that person feel strong and positive and happy and
empowered to do the task at hand, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the right word, empowered. You want to empower that person that you trust them and like you tell them, like, I know that you can do this and we're going to get to it. And whatever help that you need, I'm here. Maybe if it's a quick task, and it needs to get done quickly, maybe every 30 minutes, you just give them a little nudge of like, hey, how's it going? I'm here. Or, whatever you feel that person needs. The thing about anything I feel is that you've got that chest feeling, that you have that connection with that person. Mm-hmm. And if you feel that there's high like they're stressed out and whatever, then we need to break it down more. We need to figure out what's the next step. Crawl, walk, run,
Yep.
And so if it's a high detailed task and you've got someone, they're just like, there's so many details. Oh my gosh, what's going on? I know I can do it, but man, this is a lot. Okay, what's the first step? What do we just need to see in front of us? Mm-hmm. So that's how I handle high detailed tasks or high detailed, high detailed projects. And then, low detailed projects for me, I love low detailed projects because, I might make my creativity goes wild.
Yep. Now, so two things I wanted to touch on that you talked about there. One thing we talked about, like making them feel empowered, but the other side of that, and this was one of the hardest things for me to deal with when I first started building my team years ago, was you have to be okay with them making a mistake. And they have to know that you're okay with them making a mistake. And that mistakes will happen and that you're not going to jump down their neck, kill them, fire them, whatever. Mistakes are going to happen. And sometimes they're going to be costly. We've had one or two in our case where we've had one that cost us a $60,000 a month client.
Ooh, yep.
So, but we didn't? No, we didn't. It was like, you're either, if we fire them for a mistake. Now, if it's negligent, like real negligence or something bad, then obviously you have to do that. But if it's in the process of becoming better at your job and you're learning and whatever, and you cause something, like, it's a lot of money to the company. And obviously we're like, okay, well, what do we do? Well, if we fire that person, then that's a big expense. If we don't, if we say, hey, it's a retraining thing, like, hey, here's something we didn't do right. Here's something where the training was defective and we can support them better. Now it becomes a learning experience and that person becomes that much more valuable to the company. Yes, it was an expensive mistake, but they're still learning and it's a way to improve it. And now if it happens over and over again, well, then obviously then you got to talk about it. And then it's going to have a different outcome. But people are going to make mistakes. Now, my gut reaction, I didn't want to be nice about it. I wanted to be like, dude, you're gone. But that was my internal reaction because that's how our knee jerk, like, you hurt my baby. Now I gotta protect it. But if you let that out, your team is not going to function, right? They're going to be so terrified of making a mistake that they're not going to either they're going to quit because they don't like the tension, or they're going to be so terrified of making a mistake they get nowhere, right?
And the effect of allowing people to make mistakes and adjusting to that recommits your employee and your teammate to be devoted, positive, excited members of your team. Like, that boosts morale so much. That's what gives them that oomph to say, like, oh, I want to tackle this. I want to try this. I'm going to do whatever I can because, like, I love this company and I love this team. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this flourish, And as if you have that, you look over your shoulder kind of feeling, man, like it does drain morale, and you're only going to get maybe 50% because 65% means they might be risking something. They're not sure if they should say something.
They're not going to strive. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's such a beautiful thing to say because it's so true. And all it takes is just you to step back and see that bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Micromanagers have a hard time seeing that. And when you are a macro and you see, the beauty of what's going on, that person has so much knowledge that just made a mistake. And that's, we just need to see people as always having positive intent, always just, they're trying. And then, of course there's negligence. There's people who, just aren't, you're just like, why aren't you getting this? Or maybe you're just misaligned. Sometimes that happens. And
the best thing you can do at that point is let them go.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no hard feelings. Just like, we're just not aligned together. And, we're going to have to just move along, both of us. And that's, of course, a loss for both sides. Because, we'll have to start retraining a new person, rebuilding all of that. And that person has to rebuild too. So it's, it's never a good feeling to have to do that. But it is at times a call that needs to be made.
True. Yeah, that's great. No, 100%. Okay. So one other thing that you talked about that I wanted to touch on as like a little tip for people that, is that analyzer. I want to talk about the magic. I obviously saw Rosemary get all excited, heard her get excited about, analyzers are amazing. And they are, when you know how to leverage them. If you have, and if you are that person, you are that like a superpower in a team if you know how to leverage yourself correctly. So I'll give you an example. In BGS, we have a team member named Alex, and you guys have all seen him. He spoke on stage at BGS Lives. He's on the podcast. He's trains in our groups. He's phenomenal. Alex is now my right-hand guy. Like, he and I work together daily on the team. Alex is an analyzer. The dude is just like, he loves checklists. He loves detail. He loves the nitty gritty, and he loves learning about why those things need to work and putting it all together into this amazing plan and executing. Like, the most exciting thing in the world to him is just checking stuff off his checklist that he's getting done. And he's super high in integrity. And it's this powerhouse of a guy. And it's great for client work and whatever. But when you take that person in that role, in this case, Alex, and you pair him with someone like me, who's got tons of ideas, can execute, but also like has so many other things moving that it's not going to get done. Or, he's like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. And there's too many things going. You pair that analyzer with someone like me, or someone like Rosemary, who prefers the low detail and she could pass on the high detail to someone like Alex. You create rocket fuel. And there's actually a book called Rocket Fuel that talks exactly about that dynamic. And the analogy that I'll give you of this is actually the analogy that Alex came up with, was like, if we look at an airplane, okay, in the front, in the cockpit of the airplane, there's a pilot and a co-pilot. Okay, I'm the pilot. By myself, I jump in the cockpit, I jump in the seat, buckle up sometimes, and then I take off. Do we have fuel? Do we know where I'm going? I don't care. Ready, fire, aim. I'm just going to get in the air and I'll figure it out as I get there. Then there's Alex, the co-pilot. If Alex goes in the cockpit by himself, he sits down, he buckles his seat, he fixes his shirt, pulls out checklist 1, goes through it. Then he goes through the checklist again. And then he gets another checklist. And he goes through it. Alex never takes off because he's continuously going through the checklist. However, you put both of us in the cockpit together, the plane gets off the ground safely, it gets to the destination fast, it's efficient, it's everything, and it's accomplished. That is the power of pairing an analyzer with someone who has the bigger picture, bigger vision, or the desire to really run and move fast. And it's a great analogy because it's so true. The analyzer very seldom gets things done on their own, but when paired with someone who can pull them out of that analyzing mode, it just creates this rocket fuel symbiotic relationship where massive things can get accomplished.
Yeah. Yep. That's so awesome. So true. So true. I think we see a lot of analyzers in e-commerce. Absolutely. Just a lot there. I think I've encountered more analyzers, if you follow this, personality approach of, analyzer, controller, promoter, and supporter.
Yeah.
Those would be the 4. If you follow that as a personality guide, in my experience in e-commerce, we see a lot of analyzers, and that's great because there's so many details that need to be seen, on an e-commerce site, in coding, in, marketing and all of that. So it's always good to have promoters, all those party people, and and controllers and all of that. That's the beauty of humans is the opportunity to see all of those traits in people. But I love my analyzers, and it's so true. I need them to move forward safely. I'm just like breaking through walls, not understanding beams.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's crazy, and it's amazing. Like, you think you're a high performer, and you are. Like, we are high performers, but when you compare yourself with somebody who is complementary to your skill set, it's just amazing what can happen. And that's how you should figure out your teams. You should find out in your teams who those 4 types are and pair them up to work together in different areas. And your leaders and your key, like, senior people should all have someone in a supporting role that complements who they are. If they're an analyzer, they need someone who's not an analyzer to support them and help them do it. If they are an analyzer, they need someone who's, or not. If they're a supporter, then they need someone who is that go-getter, just they want to be behind the scenes, but just help them moving. You got to find those people and line them up with that kind of person so that they can support the person who's going to just, go crazy. Zach is a supporter.
Yeah.
Zach's our COO, chief operating officer, and he could be a CEO, he could be anything he wants, but he loves that supporting role of developing the systems and then just, basically doing this for everybody to make sure their projects move forward effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. And give your leaders the opportunity to do that. If you overload your leader with so many tasks that they might get distracted from the personalities and the human flow of working and being a part of the team, you're taking away from the potential of a really big experience. If that person is tasked and they're not able to move that task to someone else, and they're maybe just having a lot of pressure, you're not giving that leader an opportunity to dig in deep with their team and to see what's going on. And because a leader is going to be a part of all departments, they're going to be a part of every project, and that's a lot. And that leader should be there. They're going to help, they're going to help with the coding team, whatever they need. They're going to help them get that. They're going to help with the marketing team. They're going to help with this. They have their hands in so many different directions that you need to make sure that your leader is also feeling supported by you, or, by the owner or the coach. You want to make sure your captain is has the ability to do all of those things for their team, because it's the team that makes the project happen.
Yep.
And it's the leader that, guides everyone together. And it's the coach who is the last, engine that pushes everything forward. But it's the wheels in front that start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was great. Guys, we covered a lot today. This was awesome. Rosemary, thank you so much for, just jamming with me and talking with. This is obviously not our traditional e-com topic, but super valuable and super important as you build a team. And e-commerce stores need a team. It's not a solo game. So this was great. I know we're going to have you back on future episodes where we're going to talk about this stuff in more detail, different areas of it and everything, and as well as some e-com stuff, because although she didn't mention it, guys, she's actually a wizard at e-com herself and the optimization process. So we'll make sure we get to pick her brain on that stuff in future episodes.
Yeah.
And guys, right now, what you need to do right now is subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, you want to listen to Rosemary, you got to subscribe to the podcast. So click the button below to subscribe, or if you're on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. And then if you need the show notes, or you want to, find Stitcher or different links or whatever, just go to buildgrowscale.com/podcast. And we'll get you links to everything. And then if you like the episode, if you like what Rosemary had to say, leave a review. Tell us what you thought. Give us ideas for future episodes, and just interact with us. We love that. All right. So with that, guys, thank you very much. And we will see you on the next episode.